Babylon, man, I've been so torn thinking about this world lately. Babylon, truth is so deluded and it drives me crazy. Babylon, this lost world is so hopeless. Babylon, Jesus Christ, that's where hope is. Babylon, no matter what they say, it's still so lost.
Arise, shine, for the light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen above thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. Lift up thine eyes round about and see. All they gather themselves together, they come to thee. Thy sons shall come from afar, and thy daughters shall be nursed at thy side. Then thou shalt see, and flow together, and thine heart shall fear, and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee. The forces of the Gentiles shall come unto thee. That is Isaiah chapter 60, verses 1 through 5. This is Resisting Balaam, a podcast where we seek to encourage the saints to stand firm with him on his word against all of the accusations made by the world, the flesh, and the devil, as we engage the culture of death that demands the sacrifice of our children. I am Callie, and today I have a guest with me. We met maybe 5-6 years ago. You'll know him from Babies Are Murdered Here, Babies Are Murdered Here 2, and LOOR. So let me introduce you guys to Marcus Pitman. Marcus, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Hey, well, my name is Marcus Pitman. I'm currently the CEO of LOOR TV. I worked with Apologia Studios for several years, and as you said, made Babies Are Murdered Here and Babies Are Still Murdered Here. And so left Apologia to build this company and streaming platform called LOOR TV, so that Christian movies don't suck.
It's funny. It's funny that you say that. I love that tagline, but I need to confess something real quick. One of my guilty pleasures is watching really bad apocalyptic movies that are dispensational. I love them. And it's one of me and Cheryl's like really Lord's Day, like feasting times. We'll sit there and watch things like, dude, the best series was Parkour, the Beast. Oh, it was amazing, so, but I love the tagline.
I think there's a place for those films as long as those films are self-aware.
Oh yeah. Right? Well, these aren't. They're not.
They're not. And maybe that's what makes them so great. But when you look at like Hallmark movies or Lifetime movies, they know what they're making. Like they know they're making cheap movies for women,
right?
And they want to make them as cheap and fast as possible. And they're self-aware. That's why KFC can come and do like a Lifetime commercial that's 20 minutes long. That's nothing more than a commercial for KFC chicken from a Lifetime movie perspective, right? Like, because they know they're cheesy and fake, and people watch them because of that. But Christian film industry, they know they're cheap and fake. They just are not self-aware that they're not good, because they build a market on that, and they think that that's what
Christians want.
Yeah, and
they don't
have a way to get out of that system.
One of the problems that I see with Christian movies is that they are trying to be non-Christian movies and just like not doing it good at all. They're trying to rip them off instead of recognizing that the world is ripping us off. right? So they have it flipped over backwards. They want to mimic them in a Christian kind of way,
Right.
you know, maybe tone down the violence and or have it like super cheese violence, you know, or
Right.
romance, but it's still within the bounds of being acceptable, you know, but the same cheesy heartbreak story. The lady goes back to her hometown, cliche trope type of thing. And why do you think that is? Why is it you think that Christian content, whether it's like movies, books, music, I mean, music does the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do they try to ride the coattails of what's going on in the world rather than leading the world in excellence?
Well, that takes more financial risk that they probably don't think is necessary because I think like once you start getting into like those sort of things, you're talking about why doesn't the Christian film industry take any, or really the Christian entertainment industry, take any severe financial risk? I think it's because they don't really care about the industry or
Right.
think that the industry exists for any other means other than to be a source of profit. Whereas liberals believe that money is how they get power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas conservatives just tend to think, well, we just want money, and so
Right.
we leave the power out, which is a problem. We don't use our money for any. We bury it in the sand, like scriptures say, right? So we don't really use uh, the capital that God gives us in a way that's risky, uh, or in a way that is influential. I think is
Right.
probably the best way to put it.
And
And so,
and that's what I understood from when you were saying risky is like influential and like, you know, what are you willing to put into this thing at a loss or gain influence, right? Are you trying to control the narrative and control, you know, what we imbibe, or are you just going, oh, this guy over here makes a lot of money doing this thing, so I'm going to mimic it? It just seems,
yeah,
it
it's
seems not creative at all.
yeah. Well, they're not interested in creativity. They're interested in what's the easiest way to double my investment. And so that doesn't require creativity to do. That's just a math problem you have to solve, right? Um,
Right.
so that once you start looking at art from a pure math perspective, you lose uh, the value of art from a worldview maker, right, or a cultural influencer. So an example of that, for example, would be the CEO of HBO once said, uh, "We don't really care how many people watch Game of Thrones. We care about how many people talk about Game of Thrones." So, like
Mm.
for them,
Hmm.
it's more important that people are part of that HBO is part of the cultural conversation and a part of the cultural narrative than it is that they have large ratings for the show. And HBO has always been that way because they're not advertiser funded, right? So they've never had to worry about the amount of people that are watching, other than whether or not the subscribers are happy. Um,
Right.
so they have a good different business model that allows them to think in those terms. Uh, but with the Christian film industry, you have people, you know, for example, PureFlix is owned by Sony now, so they're not really a Christian company other than how they market themselves. And so Sony's only interest in PureFlix is uh, gaining the family faith driven audience that they can use to market uh, their huge collection of like children's and family TV shows that they've had over the years. And so that's
Right.
why Sony bought them. But Sony didn't buy PureFlix because they thought, man, we can really change the world
Right.
for
Right.
the sake of the gospel if we had that sort of thing. But that isn't what they were after. Now, LOOR, on the other hand, uh, our interest in making tons of money is so that we can change the world.
Right.
That's our goal, and we want to be a propaganda machine for the Christian worldview.
So yeah, you said a couple of things that I want to get to eventually about the making money and then leveraging that money or resource,
Yeah.
whether it's dollars or whatever, um, taking those resources and leveraging them for the kingdom of God.
Hmm.
That is an aspect I want to get to here in a bit. But first, what do you when you say Christian movies shouldn't suck, what would be how would you rate what makes a Christian movie not suck? I guess is what I'm trying to ask. What would be a good film
Like a good Christian movie.
or right? I mean, if your tagline is Christian movies shouldn't suck, I agree with that. What makes them not suck?
Yeah.
What would be some of the adjectives or the things that you could talk about that would describe a movie that didn't suck? What are the aspects of it?
Yeah, I think a lot of really good Christian movies are not Christian movies at all. One of
Hmm.
is Book of Eli with Denzel
Yeah.
Washington. It's probably one of the best Christian movies. That was not marketed uh, to a faith-based audience at all. It was just marketed to a typical regular Christian regular audience as well. And
Hmm.
then, well, but the problem, like we said, we kind of mentioned with the Hallmark Christian films is they're really marketing. The reason they suck like that is because they realized early on when Christian movies first started coming out that they're only going to be around in the movie theaters for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, so they're not going to have a lot of time to make a lot of money. So they realized, well, we need to sell these movies on DVD and VHS tapes, and the only way to really do that was to go to like Lifeway bookstores or the family Christian bookstores or Christian bookstores in general. And so they realized that the target shopper of those Christian bookstores are like 35-year-old women and above. And so that's sort of why all your Christian movies are really built for women. Um,
Okay.
Whereas something like the Book of Eli, who's not marketed to Christians, is really a movie that really men enjoy. Like that's a movie for men. There's violence and
Right.
fighting and defending something and all these other narratives that you don't really get. And even when you do have a film that's about men uh, in the Christian film industry, like let's say Courageous, or I think the Kendrick brothers are just doing like a new documentary that they're doing for men. Those movies tend to be marketed uh, for women to bring their men to
Right.
watch it,
Right.
right? So it's still like marketed for women, but
Right.
it's subtle. But if you watch them, yeah, this is still the same thing. Um,
Right.
so um, yeah, so it's really interesting. And so what we want to do at Lore is we obviously you have to know what a bad Christian movie is if you're going to say that movies shouldn't be bad. And so I think a lot of that comes down to worldview, and just I think the most important thing we can do is just give artists the freedom to really make what they want. That's been
Right.
really valuable is and not giving notes from the top down, um,
Right.
and whatnot. So it should be yeah, I think you'll see with Lore some of the projects that we have coming up. You'll see that we're different and we're not trying to be Christian, I think. In that sense, I think that's important as well. Like Pureflix tries to be Christian, right? Everything about them
Hmm.
is like it's attempting to be this pristine Sunday school sort of film, and or brand, really Pureflix brand. Whereas we're just like, no, like we're obviously Christian, uh, but we just want to give artists the freedoms to make what they want, and if they're Christian, the artists are Christian, then they're going to make something great, right? Like Augustine
Right.
said, or Athanasius said, love God and do what you want. And so that's sort
Yeah.
of our mentality for the Christian filmmakers. Well, just love God and make what you want. And with our platform, if the audience likes it, they'll reward you for it. If they don't like it,
Right.
they won't reward you for it. And so we're not
Right. So
bound
it's
by external factors
yeah,
like
so
that.
it's like Luther with the shoes and stuff. Like you don't have to put a cross on the shoes, just make good shoes.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I heard
like people are
he was
either
not the
gonna
one that said that, but
you know,
but it's a great quote.
it is a great little story, true or not,
Yeah, right.
and it serves the point. Yeah, so you have artists just making whatever movie, documentary, short film that they want. How how do they pitch it to you?
Yeah, so usually what they do is we have a chief content officer. His name is Jason Farley. There we have a creative submission form on LOOR.tv for artists, and he goes through that several times a week and finds really the best pitches that catch his eye, um, and
Hmm.
and then from there he'll give a phone call and give a talk, and those are sort of things. So there's a lot of systems we have in place, really. One, make sure that the filmmakers who are making stuff can actually make stuff, and if we give them money, they're not going
Right,
to run away with it and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things like that, and looking at their demo reels and stuff they've done in the past as well. But really, the main thing that's important to us at this stage specifically is just whether or not we like the project. Jason says he knows it's a good pitch if after the pitch he can't sit down. And so that's been really fun to see in the sense because that's a different philosophy than a lot of film studios have, whereas they
right,
know it's a good pitch if the algorithm determines it's a good pitch, right? Or if the math determines it's a good pitch. And usually what you
right,
get in those instances are just nonsense. But because we are Christians and we know that we're made in the image of God and everybody is made in the image of God, we know that there's a good chance that if there's something that strikes a chord with us and gets us
it's going to
excited,
strike.
it's gonna strike a chord with other image bearers. That's not a
Right,
principle you can lock in on an investor spreadsheet.
right,
But it is a legitimate there is a sense of what does your gut say in businesses that's
right,
really important, and that I think a lot of the studios, secular and Christian, have just completely just abandoned.
right. Well, one of the things that I've talked to you about before, or maybe a couple of years ago, um, is there's this idea that oftentimes Christian artists, whether it's like music, paintings, or like video content, they'll say things like, I just want to get the message out. I don't really care about getting paid as much. And that, that's like a defeatist attitude.
Yeah,
It's like, how much do you think your labor is worth? How much do you think your creativity is worth? How much,
yeah,
yes, there is a message that you want to get out, but are you willing? Is that message so important that you divest yourself only? Like,
yeah.
well,
That
what kind of influence is that? What kind of resource gathering and usage is that?
well, I
You
think
know,
that is a lie that the Christian film industry has used to justify low budget films, and they've
mm-hmm.
never gotten out of that. Right? You can't say the Christian film industry doesn't make any money because it makes a lot of money and it makes a lot of profit. But they, I think one of the things, for example, the film industry, Christian film industry would they say, they would tell the pastor to just buy every seat in the theater and then pass the tickets out for free, right? Like that. When a Christian movie comes out, that's usually what they do. They encourage pastors to buy an entire theater room and then just pass the tickets out to free to people in the church. Well, that's not a Christian economic principle that lets the movie live or die on its own merits. Um,
Right. Right.
right. So you just sort of just get this sort of nonsense, and then from a profit standpoint, people are like, "Great, the movie was profitable," but they'll never be able to get it even more profitable because they're just relying on that same demo that
Right.
buys movie tickets no matter what the movie is. So there's
Well,
again the
you
risk
then you
is
got
low
the
for
work, you got the workbooks and the compendium books and the, that go along with the courageous movie that the women buy for them and their husbands to work through their marriage together. I mean, there's a lot of like aftermarket sales of products that are not the movie that they try to make in, but none of that is like really money going to the artists themselves is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know.
What, what
I don't know what the merch deals are for like Fireproof and all that. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not opposed to merch at all.
oh, I'm not either. I'm
Yeah,
I'm just saying like there's money to be made,
yeah,
but who is making the money?
yeah. Well, it's Franklin, Tennessee. I think would probably be it in Scottsdale, Arizona, where Purefix is located for sure. Well, now Sony. But yeah. So I don't know. Like I don't know how those deals work out. Like I know, for example, like Fireproof. Like I'm not sure all those book sales who got a part of that. I imagine the Kendrick brothers did, and I imagine probably Kirk got a little piece of that as well, which is amazing, and I'm happy. I'm
Right.
happy for them. But yeah, but I think like you're right. Like um, it. I think this is why VeggieTales was so successful was because the merch was huge, and it wasn't just books. It was toys and T-shirts and birthday party stuff, right? Like so there's a whole different sort of merch. You're not gonna have a fireproof birthday party. I hope not. Right.
Right.
So but again, like the Christian film industry, for some reason, like something really works, and they never take the profits from what works and reinvest it or risk it more specifically into trying to
Right.
find other things that work and then grow and continue to grow. But when you look at like VeggieTales, from what I heard, was actually the number two most popular animated cartoon series of all time, right under Pokemon. And Pokemon was huge only because it was a worldwide thing, right? So when you look at like the success, like Christians have everything they need to be successful, but that money didn't wind up going into making really incredible, amazing stuff. It went, into the companies that fought over and eventually bought VeggieTales, and then
Right.
Phil Vischer becomes a Marxist, and uh, it just becomes a disaster. A Marxist and a racist, I would say, based on some of this critical race theory stuff he's been talking about. But yeah, so it's just it's really strange to see that. But yeah, it seems like when I'm making lore, and I look at like what does lore look like 10 years from now, like I want to be risking 50, 100, 150 million dollars on projects to hope to get a
Right.
return on those, and I want to make really amazing projects, and I want to make films that are going to do really well and make even more money, and I want to make films that I know are not going to make any money at all, but they're going to shake things up, right? So,
Right.
that's why you grow a company. That's probably why Sony buys PureFlix, because they know that the Christian movies are going to make profit, and then they can take the profits from the PureFlix movies and invest them into unprofitable homosexual documentaries that nobody wants to watch, right?
Right.
So
Right.
with the Christian money, and
Right.
so that's a fear. That's something we should probably really consider. What's happening to the profits from Christian movies now, especially now that they're either going to Sony or Mormons, an angel or whatever,
Right.
right? So
So just like we just talked about how a lot of times Christian movies are riding the coattails of what's happening on in the world. They're not doing anything innovative. They're not doing anything new. They're just traipsing along, just trying to ride the wave,
Mhm.
so to speak. Um, when looking at LOOR, it's not trying to be just like, say, Netflix or any other streaming service. It's a totally different type of structure, right?
Yeah, yeah, that was my I always had there was this weird time, um maybe, gosh, when did the Reform Pub really get started? I don't remember. I don't like, whenever the Reform Pub got started, and I love Les, there were all these offshoots that started like, oh, we're the Reformed this thing, and we're the Reformed that thing, right? And like they all came out of this Reform Pub thing, um, and and I always was like, why are they not just building great brands, right, with their podcasts or whatever? Like, just
Right.
make a great show, and you don't have to define it so specifically for the niche. Although niches are good, like especially with the internet, like you can make a lot of money on a well-defined niche, but that doesn't need to be the only thing. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you have to have a reformed product, right? And so, same thing with uh, all the reformed merch shirts that came out, and all the the reformed merch and all that sort of stuff. There was always this part of me that's like, man, the amount of energy and effort that they're putting on building this reformed version of something, they could just make a great version of something.
Yeah.
And so when we made LOOR, that's where part of the reason we have the name that we do is because we just wanted like a non-meaningful 4-digit email web address, right? And so, and the thing that made the most sense was LORE, and that wasn't available. And then we looked into LOOR, and the prefix meaning of what that word means and stuff like that. And the web domain was available, and that's why we got it. We got that name specifically because it wasn't reformed flicks, right? So,
Right.
um,
Right.
and we wanted a global brand. You were just speaking to an investor, potential investor, this week, and he said, we don't invest in alternative platforms because they don't normally do well. He's like, well, you guys aren't building an alternative platform. You guys are building a cool brand, right? And it's like
Right.
that's
Right.
the difference, right? Chick-fil-A is Christian company, really cool brand, right? And then Hobby Lobby, it's a cool brand. It's not a Christian craft store where you go and get only Christian, crafts. Anybody can go there and get craft stuff that, the hobbies and stuff that
Right.
they have. So like that was a really important thing for us. Now, that doesn't mean that there's going to be, porn on our platform, just like, uh, we're more of a grocery store than a food item, right? And so a
Right.
grocery store defines, like Walmart, for example. Walmart defines what can go on the shelves, and the rules in which are required for those items to go on the shelves. But that doesn't necessarily mean uh, the consumer is still the one that determines ultimately how long it stays on that shelf, right? And so that's what
Right.
LOOR is essentially. We're letting people come on. They have to follow our rules. They can make the movies that they want, and they can do what they want as pretty much as long as there's no blasphemy and no nudity are two main things. And so as long as it fits under that category, we're fine with having you on our platform, but it's the consumer that's going to decide whether or not you purchased. And so that is probably the best example as to what LOOR is in the streaming space. Is we're a grocery store, and we set the rules to define whether or not a product can be on our shelves. And so, but it's
So
up to the
can
consumer
you
ultimately.
Can you describe how you have it set up that the consumer is the one that decides um, if you got a Christian movie that sucks or doesn't? You know
Like
that.
on our platform specifically, how that
Yeah,
works?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the way it works is, well, with Netflix or Disney Plus right now, you have a monthly subscription. Let's say it's $20 a month. That $20 a month, maybe half or more of that money goes towards in a pool, and that pool is used to fund movies and TV shows that you do not want to see most of the time. It's there's about 7 people in all the world, and those 7 people uh, sort of make the decisions for Hollywood. Uh, well, they make the decisions for all the content you see throughout the whole world. So there's only about 7 people that do that, and they do that with the percentage of your monthly subscription money. So with LOOR, what we're doing is we're saying, well, instead of taking that money and making what the executives want, why don't we set aside that money and let the monthly subscribers determine what they want
Hmm.
to fund uh, early on in the process instead of later on. Because right now in Hollywood, the viewer doesn't know a project exists really until the trailer drops. And so our
Right.
thinking is like, well, what if they knew about every step of the way? Right. And so that's sort of the way it works. And so if you have a movie or a TV show that you want to make, you can pitch it to our audience and they'll use their monthly subscription collectively. In the same sense, it's almost like MedShare for filmmaking, right? So everybody has a monthly
Hmm.
subscription, and then they contribute towards the funding of that project or TV show. And so that yeah, so that's sort of how it works. And on a large scale of let's say 300,000 to a million monthly subscribers, uh, there's enough content fund available to really rival anything that Hollywood puts out. And
Right.
that's not a lot, especially in the conservative market space alone. That's not a lot, and in the Christian market space, it's not a lot either. And so that's sort of the plan. Is just it's med share for films. I guess is probably the best way to put it.
So you just had the beta testing rollout. It's gone live for what, like a month now? Almost a month?
Yeah. So we went out. We started maybe the first week in April, I think is I mean we started before that, but we really rolled out invites probably the first week in April at some point. And then it just took off. It went nuts. We funded I think we're up to 4 shows now. I've been so busy I haven't checked to see what Teach All Nations and Dark Holler are up to today. Um, let's see. Uh, so, so Teach All Nations. Oh yeah, this is at 70% for the third episode, and then Dark Holler is already funded 34% for the fourth episode. So yeah, so we're funding these series one at a time, one episode at a time, and um, uh, the users growth has been incredible. It's been free. We're not charging people for joining yet. There's a lot of things we want to test in terms of whether the ledger that keeps track of everybody's funds that's spent is accurate and there's no bugs in it, and we don't want any loot lost in the back end or anything like that, and so we make sure everything is accounted for. And so there's a lot of tests and stuff that we have to do, but the biggest test we had to do really for us was um, like what does the consumer even think of this product, right? Because over the past 2 years we've talked to several investors, and different investors have different fears about investing in your business, and so they'll issue objections. And one of the objections was, well, Kickstarter and Netflix is too much, it should be either one or the other. But we realized we realized that that was not the case, and people were actually really, they didn't just like it, they were really obsessed with this. They get really passionate about seeing their next TV show and telling their friends to get an account so it can fund faster, and they see the benefits of that. And so it's been really fun to watch that. We had a guy 3D print loot coins, really amazing. So yeah, it's been a really fun month as we've done the beta and we prepare for an actual paid subscriber launch in the coming months. So
So when are you expecting the subscriber launch to go in?
that just depends on when we close our next investment round.
Okay,
So that's
right
part
on,
of the first thing we're gonna do with the next round. Yeah.
man. That's super cool. Yeah, I've enjoyed. The website is pretty user friendly. It's easy to navigate through. Um, there were some things on there that I was like, okay, I don't have a Gab, so I'm not going to link to that. And like, so there, I mean, there were certain things on there that I'm old and they're just not things that I do. Right.
Right. Right.
Um, the other thing, man, you were so excited last week about this change. You're like, everybody's been saying we want to, do you really want to put your dollars on this thing button? I got to be honest that I despise that. I said what I said when I pushed all in. I don't want to have to do it twice. I want a one click buy. Come on now. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
But
are you talking about the confirmation button?
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man, I hate that on all of the websites. On like
Yeah.
I hate that on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said it, didn't I? You
Yeah.
know, like
Exactly. The problem is the amount of time and energy it takes to refund people that didn't mean it is better
yeah.
just to
I mean,
add
I get that.
it.
Yeah.
So
I love how it's spun though. Like, hey, you guys have said you wanted this thing. Well, we're giving it to you.
yeah, we got
Yeah, like,
developers working on stuff every day. I mean, it was amazing. Just we got it so that it worked. The first thing we launched, the first week or two, we were kind of like, oh no, like we launched without the ability to stream anything. So we were just trying to test the funding mechanisms, and then we're like, oh no, this thing's going to fund pretty quick. We better get some sort of streaming ability up, and then we got it up, and then we're like, oh man, we got to figure out how to add closed captioning. We have to figure out how to add Chromecasting. We had to figure out how
right,
to, the volume bar, all those sort of things. It's amazing what we take for granted, and all the video content systems that we watch online most of the time. They've been around for 10 years. They're pretty well polished, and we're building
right.
everything from scratch, right? So um, but yeah, so it's been really fun, and trying to outpace the users, and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of excitement for the platform, and once we close our next investment round, we're going to throw some gasoline on this thing in a way most people didn't imagine, and it's going to be really fantastic.
Yeah. So your growth has been really fast,
Mhm.
more than what you projected.
Yeah, double,
Um, oh wow, that's great.
over
Um,
double. Yeah.
is it a lot of it organic, or is
Yeah,
it
the
because
all
of
the gro-
ads
all
or?
yeah, all the growth we've had has only been from my Facebook page primarily. Um, I mean, John Speed's been posting links and stuff, but I think a majority of that came from my Facebook page a few weeks ago, and then of course everybody that joins gets invites, and so they're
Right,
inviting people, and so I think
right,
most of it is organic. I mean, we haven't paid any money to get people to join the site.
right,
And so it's all been through word of mouth that we got that growth that fast. I think we met our user goal in the first 2 weeks for the whole beta, and now at this point, 2 weeks after that, we've doubled it, um, and over doubled it. So yeah, it's going good. We're doing really well, and we're the growth is still happening, which doesn't mean anything at this stage, because ultimately they could all decide not to uh,
pay for
get
the
a paid
service.
monthly subscription.
Right,
Uh, but those are all marketing problems and stuff that can be solved
right,
very easily. We've solved, like we like to say, we've solved all our problems that capital can't fix.
right,
Right.
right,
So that's the most important thing an investor wants to hear. And when you're building a business, because the worst thing that could happen is people could have joined the site and just said, I don't know what this is, and never come back. But we've had
Right.
the opposite.
Right.
Every Tuesday, there's a massive upturn and people coming in and law and downloading and not downloading, spending their loot and all that other stuff. And so, yeah, it's been really tremendous, and it's been fun, man. It's been 2 years of work to get to this point, and now here we are. So
Well, one of the things that I saw in there that not on lore, but floating around was the snore campaign thing. It
did you
like
do that? Is that
it,
you?
no, no. I wish I could take credit for that, but it's brilliant, man. Like
I wish I could take credit for it.
oh man, like it's really well done. And like
Yeah,
if we're gonna be honest, that like the graphics are really good and it's funny.
yeah,
If we can't laugh at ourselves,
right.
then what are we even doing? Like the writing on it is really funny.
Yeah,
I think so. And
we're
the
self-aware. We know we've said from day one we're gonna chop the head off of Hollywood and whatever. But um, I, I can't imagine being in a room full of investors and not having that vision, right? Like no investor wants to hear uh, the safe route. No good investor wants to
right,
hear the safe route. They want to know like what's your overall goal, what's your overall vision. And you can look at Elon Musk that says, oh no, I want to go to Mars. Like that, well, that sounds insane. Right? That
I
sounds,
know.
yeah, you don't want to use the government to go to Mars. He's like, no, I want to go to Mars and I'm going to do it through a private company. And not only that, we want to colonize Mars um, in such a way you have people like Rod Martin saying, we need to be thinking about the first church on Mars because it's going to happen. Right. And so, there is a crazy absurdity to that sort of thing. And I always look at like David in the Bible too. People must have thought he was insane. One, his age, right? He was insane
Right.
in his height and didn't wear the armor, right? And then goes out there and starts talking about the uncircumcised Philistines, and like it just like from a business perspective, that's insane. But that's exactly what happened with pretty much every major business. I mean, Amazon started. They called themselves Amazon because they wanted to sell everything from A to Z, right? And that's why that was how they were able. That's where that name came from because it had A and Z in it. And so even before they sold their first book, they're like, we're going to sell everything.
Right. Right.
Right. And so every big business is backed by a visionary that says this is our plan, this is our mission. Now they might not talk about it like we do, uh, but I think the reason that we talk about it is really because when we started this thing, we didn't really know any investors. We didn't know, like, we weren't in that world. We just knew,
Right.
we just heard that if you want to do it, talk about what you're going to do. And so that's what we started to do. And that's what's got us this far. There's no way we would have gotten as far as we have without that sort of confidence, I think. And we've said from the get go, like, if God wants to destroy Hollywood, and I don't think there's any hesitation on that fact that he would like to do that. Uh, there needs to be someone that rises up and said, "I'll do it," and
Right.
and then from
Right.
there, it's just work as hard as you can and trust the Lord for the results. And so I think that's what we're doing. But no, like every single business that's become something huge has started with these crazy ideas that Snore mocks us for, which is really. Here's something really funny. We actually do have a marketing budget. If Snore would have come to us and pitched this idea, we probably would have
They
paid him
could have
for
got paid for it. Yeah. No. Like
it
dude,
because it's
the
really a
stuff
great
they put out
idea.
the stuff
Yeah,
they put out on Bollywood. Oh man, that like had me rolling.
yeah, it's really. I mean, we could have hired them for our marketing team. It'd been fantastic. But I've learned doing this too that um, you know, it takes us. There's a lot of people that just don't have vision.
Right.
They're made to be employees and not employers. And that's okay. That's how God made certain people. He made some people to be the commanders of armies, and then some people to be in the army, right? That's just how God makes people. And so it's been really interesting to see the people that don't have any vision, or especially when it comes to Christianity, and probably dispensationalism has a lot to do with that, I would think, for sure. But I think postmillennialism helps kind of break you out of that, in terms of like, uh, like Arthur Guinness signing a 9,000-year lease for the land of St. James's Gate, where they make Guinness beer, right? 9,000-year lease is insane. It's insane.
Right.
And they still have the lease. You can go and see the lease today. It's still there at the factory, but only a Christian worldview can account for the next 9,000 years. Elon Musk doesn't even think the Earth is going to be around in 9,000 years. So that's why he's trying to get people to Mars as fast as possible. But still, his eschatology is moving him forward into the future, and he doesn't have an eschatology of defeat. Whatever his
Right.
eschatology is, it's not one of defeat. It is one of um, humanity prospering. So,
Right. Did you notice what I titled this when I sent you the link?
oh, is it
What the
every
link was
digital
called?
square inch?
Yeah, that's what's
Yeah,
up, man.
that's awesome.
So, so I was supposed to give a lecture at the Cruciform conference this year, entitled "Every Digital Square Inch," but I've pretty much had to cancel all of my speaking engagements for the time being.
Okay.
Um, but that whole
Well, I'm
idea
speaking at
of
the Cruciform conference this year. Maybe I'll just take your title and you.
but like it's one that we don't think of
No, we
quite
don't.
often, that when Kuiper has that quote, he's talking about all of human experience,
Right.
right? And are are you trying to tell me that the digital world is not real,
Yeah.
that Jesus does not have authority even over that? I
Yeah.
mean, like, what is it that we really believe? We like to throw out these pithy little quotes, but we don't act like it really penetrates our lives and causes us to do things like create a platform,
Right.
create content, or like really be creative. I mean, that's where the word comes from. Like, we've kind of neutered ourselves over the past little while, and it's time that we really start imaging God,
Yeah.
right? Like, what does that look like, in the digital world, but two, what does it look like with my vocation, am I expressing a sense of creativity that God has given me? And these are all gifts and resources that he's given to me. How am I leveraging those for the kingdom of God? How am I doing my duty to footstool his enemies, to be his hands and feet, right? And that's
Right.
one of the things that I appreciate about LOOR, and what, just from, over the past like year and a half or so, talking to John and talking to you, and just like seeing it progress. That is one of the things that I really appreciate, is just this focus of Christian, go out there and do Christian things.
Right.
God has given you resources. Leverage those resources. Be an influence. And I see that in this project, being successful in living that out.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah. I think one of the things that Marxists have been really good at is they've been really good at using money to take over cultural institutions. And I don't think Christians have done that. So, this is what was so amazing, really, about what Elon Musk taking over Twitter, because that was the first time someone who, he's not a I wouldn't call him a conservative, but I would say that he is a capitalist and he's not a Marxist, at least, um, on a on a general sense. I'm sure you could find a lot of Marxism in him, in some of the things he does, but not intentionally, I don't think. And so I think that was the first time that someone came in really, I guess you could just, for the sake of the discussion, as a conservative, or the way that's the way the world sees it, as a conservative comes in and just takes over a Marxist communication tool, right? Like that's exactly what he
Right.
did. I mean, like if you read the tweets, they're not mad that he went and bought a company. They're mad that he bought uh, a communication tool, right? Like
Right.
that's how they see
Right.
Twitter. They don't see Twitter as a business; they see it as a communication tool. Like Christians, I don't think see uh, companies and businesses in those sort of way anymore. We just see it as a way to a good example of this is my friend Joffrey Swaite said Christians think about business in terms of how it can provide for their kids, but they're not willing to make the sacrifices in their business and for their kids for the sake of their great grandkids, right?
Right. Right.
So example of this would be you have a business and some Marxist people come along and they say, look, we're going to take 50% of your company, but we're going to give you several $1 billion. You'll be set for life. And anybody, would take that deal. But a Christian should look at that and go, yeah, but now my great grandkids don't have the company and they're not making billions. Right. So it's
Right.
harder because now you're building a company without that sort of capital, and your family doesn't have that sort of capital. But ultimately, in the long run, that's how you get companies like Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A that are family owned for several
Right.
generations. That's sort of just that's what, and it's harder to do that. It's
Well,
very
that's
easy.
something that's lacking in the church overall is this idea of multi-generational
Right,
living
right,
and handing down an inheritance to your children. Not just
right.
like finances, but like a name, a
Hmm.
skill,
Yeah,
opportunity, privilege. Even if you look at the average church congregation, you don't see multi-generational families attending together. You
hmm,
you know what I mean?
right,
A lot of times you don't even see children inside worshiping and learning what it looks like to worship the triune God together as a body. They ship
right,
the kids off, ship the
right.
teenagers off. We're going to have an old people service versus a young people service,
Hmm.
and there's this discontinuity that is missing in the churches, and that bleeds out into how we look at business, right?
Right.
Or how we look at um, even land owning, right? Like having property. What good is having property? Well,
Right. Well, we
for
don't own
my
property in the
kids.
United States anymore, not with property taxes,
Well,
but yeah.
right,
No, but I hear
true,
you. Like land is really important. That that's one thing that I'm really passionate about is being able to work in such a way that I can buy some land for my family. Uh, but it's also too about building an organization that makes a ton of money, and that my great grandkids can run one day, right?
right,
Like that's like that. It's not just about making a lot of money. It's about making a lot of money and passing on ownership. So when you do that, that makes it harder because now suddenly you can't do an IPO. Well, you can,
right,
but it's a lot more difficult to do it in such a way that you always you take. It's just you probably wouldn't do an IPO if you did it, and so IPOs are a quick way to make a lot of money, and to pay your investors back too, because you have pressure from investors that they want to get paid back, they want a 10x or whatever, and so spending the time and finding investors that sees the long vision and the long game for their children as well and grandchildren as well is difficult to do, but it can be done. I'm finding that there's a lot of Christian capital out there. There's just not a lot of good ideas for them to do anything with, right? So
right.
that's what's been really encouraging through this process is figuring that out and trying to make those connections and what that is, but also knowing that with everything that's happening with liberals and taking over the media and stuff, that there's a lot of interest in it. So yeah, so we'll see what happens.
Man, that's awesome. So, what's the website? How do people go and check out what's going on?
Yeah, if you
Do
go
they
to
need an invite now,
yeah,
or
you still need to invite. So you have to find a friend. Maybe if Callie shares this on his Facebook, uh, and and ask for an invite on the post or whatever, we'll find some ways to get you invites if you listen to this. But also, you can just ask me on Facebook Messenger, or just ask another friend that has had LOOR for 1 week. They'll have every week they get invites after the first week, and so yeah, so that's yeah, so that's how you get in right now. And there's two seasons of a show to watch, Dark Holler and Teach All Nations, and they're funding too. So when they're funded, they'll either some of the episodes are still being made, but we'll put them out as soon as they're done. But yeah, it's really been a fantastic experiment the past month. So
man, that's awesome. How can people get a hold of you? And well,
yeah, so you go
obviously
to
on Facebook.
loor.tv, LOOR.tv. You can get a hold of me, uh, and then also I'm pretty much the one that manages our Twitter at Watch LOOR. And so if you go on Twitter, you can find us on Watch LOOR, and Gab on Watch LOOR as well. So that's probably the best way on Facebook.
Right on, man. Well, everybody, go check out LOOR and go out there and do Christian things. You know, take the resources that God has given you and like really invest them. Like Marcus was talking about, we have a tendency of just like burying them in the sand and then going, hey, I know you love this stuff and I didn't want to lose it. Use it. Use it
Yeah,
to earn more for the next multi generation, not just one, not just two, but have a long vision of kingdom building. Look around, look around.
yeah,
This is what we inherit. That's what Jesus told us.
right,
This is ours.
right,
Let's live like this is our inheritance. You get an inheritance. You don't just like forget it and think that it's worthless. You know that this is ours. Let's learn to live like it is ours. And until next time, join the resistance and wield the sword of truth. Our Lord has left us here to navigate through this world as priests in the kingdom of God. Apply the mind of Christ and battle against the culture that hates God and loves death.